Shout out to Season of Walsh for interviewing the great legendary Vusi Thembekwayo. Many of us have been inspired and continue to be inspired by Vusi Thembekwayo, together with the man he's sitting beside in this podcast. I'm about to show you and have a discussion about this, what they were talking about, Season. And shout out to Season of Walsh for being crowned one of the best influential podcasts on the internet in South Africa for 2024. You deserve it, man. Your podcast is very influential. So they were talking about South Africa needs to start adapting like even other African countries have done. Nigeria, Botswana, whereby they adapt and the citizens adapt outside of depending on the government. Also drawing influence from some of the things even people from India have been able to do. Listen here.
Fabric of business in India are these multi-generational dynasty family businesses that run India. This is why you've got Ambani, Andani, Tata. You think it's just a name. It's a family name. It's a surname. Right? It's multi-generational. Yeah. Ratan Tata, who's credited with the growth of that business, was generation 3. We're now in generation 7. So we acknowledge the old man who's generation 3 and has just recently passed. But the generation we're at now is generation 7, which means somebody generation 1 would have started him. And South Africa's at gen 1, and yet we're not even thinking, talking, conversing at the level where we should be going, what is our GDP per capita and how do we double it? And what are the strategic sectors of our economy and how do we feed them? I think that short-term mindset of ours is just it's such a pity because, and let me just say one last thing.
By all means, we've got time.
Caesar, there are some people who talk Africa. They talk about it. They read Nkwane Nkrumah's works. They read Thomas Sankara's works. And, they talk about Nkwane Nkrumah. It might leave your, afro uncombed and round your R's a little bit, and you appear more of a revolutionary than me, for sure. But some of us are in it. And there is, as you know, quite a way between academically understanding something and being in it.
Absolutely.
Some of us are in it. I'm going to Uganda tomorrow. I was just in Zambia, just in Ghana, I was in Zambia, Ghana, Nigeria, Tanzania, Zanzibar in less than a week.
Wow.
And I'm there on business, right? And we're talking business and we're backing businesses. So I can tell you what's happening in those economies.
Yeah.
And one of the things that worries me about South Africa specifically is that the level of conversation and hunger that I see from young Africans in other parts of the continent is so different. And I think in part it's because they have given up on the idea that there is a government coming to save them.
Sure.
And so they're just like, I'm going to have to do this myself, whatever this is. And if we could weave that, a decent education system and that level of grit and hunger, if we could just adopt a little bit of it into our daily conversations, right? If we could challenge ourselves to make sure that we make both the ephemeral and the substantive trend on Twitter, that we can be funny and also talk about the things that actually matter, we would go so much further. Because here's what most South Africans, with respect I say this, who've not traveled the continent don't understand. It still holds true in South Africa today that if you and I do business and we disagree and I take it to a court of law, the court will hear the matter and the court ruling will hold. There are many parts of the continent where that's not the case. There are people in South Africa today whose garages have better infrastructure than some airports in the continent. So when we talk about South Africa, you must understand where we are relative to the rest of our peers. Like we truly, honestly, legitimately have an advantage in terms of infrastructure. And what we have to be careful of is not to get so consumed with where we lack that we forget where we are strong and use where we are strong as a platform from which to build. Sure. And I'm not saying pretend we are equal and, kumbaya, and I'm not saying that at all.
Absolutely.
But I am saying we should be careful not to be so hard on ourselves that we don't acknowledge even the things that work.
Yeah. No, that's really important.
So that's what they were talking about. It's very intriguing what these people are talking about. And when you sit down and actually digest with full comprehension to understand, not just to be triggered or responsive, you actually get to realize that what they're saying makes sense. And when you're living in reality or just observing South Africa visually from online, how people behave, the patterns from different sectors, societies, you realize that we are not realizing how much we have in our country to our advantage. We're not using it to our advantage. First of all, Wi-Fi is almost everywhere. Secondly, like there's technology, there's YouTube, you can draw influence from everywhere. You can learn anything from anyone everywhere without even you going to varsity or going to school. You can be equipped with skills and knowledge, even better than people who went to schools. So, business-wise, we are not adapting as South Africans, and usually us as blacks, the marginalized, we are not adapting and stepping up to the plate and competing with the global world. Because in other African countries, whether Nigeria, whether Botswana, whether wherever, there is an increased number of progress and black success stories coming from those countries. Black millionaires, black whatever. And I'm not saying in our country we are not doing it. We're just not doing it enough, because when you look at the GDP of our country, it's not reflective of the work we are performing. A GDP that is growing at 0.04. That's not something to be proud of. They also spoke about what's happening in India. Indians are able to sustain their family generational businesses, 7 generations in a row, continuously mastering the skill of making the family business be sustainable. Here in South Africa, we still have people who are listening to Penwell the Black Pen tell them about, no, me, I'm not gonna force my kids to be in the family business. They have to start their own things. And then you listen to such advice and you believe it. That's your family business, my man. If in your family there's a spaza shop, it depends on you to carry it on to the next generation when, God forbid, I mean this with all my heart, God forbid, when the time need be that the people who are currently running it leave the world, you need to run it and be able to sustain it, to hand it over to your child. It's a family business. It's what is going to create profit generationally. You are breaking the cases by sustaining it. So there's nothing wrong with that. Many countries, they were talking about India. Indians, they are able to sustain and upscale their businesses and expand their family businesses. And the Indians are investing back in their societies, in their GDP, in their economy. Indian people, Indian families, Nigerians, they are working hard, man. The work ethic of many Nigerians is too much. We see them even in America. The amazing things Nigerians are pulling out there in America, representing Africa. Yes, even South Africans, but us talking about other African countries, that doesn't mean we hate South Africa. We are just able to isolate South Africa and speak about other countries and applaud other countries. It can be done and you can do it too. But shout out to these two gentlemen for bringing this up. I thought I should let you guys know that there's something like this. Thank you very much.